Okay, everyone. Hello and good afternoon. My name is John Dodds, and I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of Kencor Elevator Systems, which is an American elevator group company. I'm also the chair of the NAEC Member Services Committee, and I want to welcome everyone to this town hall discussion and what has become a series of dialogues with various leaders within the vertical transportation industry. These conversations have focused on topics that have been identified by NAEC members as important and significant ones for their businesses. The topics for the town hall sessions have been assembled from various sources, and the topics range from immediate needs that you face daily to the longer-term objectives relating to successfully sustaining your businesses. The Member Services Committee is always looking for feedback on this series of events. So if you have any feedback in general, or if you have ideas about topics for future town hall events, please reach out to Lori Wolking, and she can be reached at lori@naec.org. I want to apologize to the group. I'm fighting a little bit of a head cold, so I promise I have gone through puberty. It's just my cold here, so bear with me. Today's topic is about why leadership style matters. Our speaker will help you discover your natural leadership style while also exploring alternative styles. If you took the time to do the leadership assessment quiz in preparation for this event, our speaker will help you learn how to score it and why your leadership style matters. We are also going to put a link to the quiz in the chat or in the Q&A window. Jeff Hansen, I did see your note there about the chat not working, so please feel free to use the Q&A window as an alternative until we see if we can get that squared away in the background. But we will put a link in either one of those places so that if you did not have the ability to do the quiz prior to, you can click on. It's 18 questions. You can do it, pretty quickly as we're going through the presentation. And then at a certain point in the presentation, we're gonna actually get back to what that means. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to provide a couple of updates on important upcoming NAEC activities. Prepare to join us next month for the Spring Educational Conference in Miramar Beach, Florida, on April 14th through 17th, 2024. It's not too late to register. You can register by going to the NAEC website at naec.org. The next Gen Retreat will be held immediately after the spring conference on April 18th and 19th at the same location. This is a great opportunity for the next generation of leaders in our industry to meet others in the industry and develop their leadership skills. Women in Motion will be hosting two upcoming events. April 10th, the morning of the ECNY Showcase from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at the Villa Barone Manor in the Bronx during the spring conference. And during the spring conference on April 17th from 7:30 to 9 a.m. These events provide excellent opportunities for networking and discussion about their 2024 initiatives to help bring more women into our industry. NAEC, in collaboration with SECA, Elevator U, and IAEC, will join this year to host the United Convention, which is September 23rd to 26th in Atlantic City. Registration will open in late April, so be on the lookout for more information soon. With those items out of the way, let's move forward with our town hall event. We will have time at the end of the presentation for a Q&A session, but if you have a question during the presentation for our presenter, please feel free to enter it into the Q&A window, and I will do my best to get those over to Vong in a timely fashion. As always, we try to do the Big Ben rule here, start on time, end on time. So we try to be mindful of everyone's time, wrap up no later than 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And now to introduce our speaker, Vong Keovongsa, MSHM, has over 23 years experience in HR with 10 years as a business consultant, having managed over 25 change management initiatives. Vong started in the elevator industry in 2010 with ThyssenKrupp Elevator as Regional Director of Human Resources. He also served as VP of HR for Oracle Elevator and has held the role of Sales and Marketing Manager for Madden Elevator. Vong launched a recruiting firm for the elevator industry, Vertical Recruiting Group, in 2014. It's great to see you, Vong, and thanks for taking the time to join us today. As I begin to turn this over to you, if you want to try to get your screen shared, Lori, if you can take yours down, we're also going to put a poll up for the audience, and we're going to ask you guys to answer the poll. So the poll should come up, and the question for the poll is, who agrees with the saying, leaders are made, not born? As we're beginning to answer that, Vong, I will turn that over to you.
Great, thank you for that. So thank you, Lori, and thank you, John, for the invitation to speak on this town hall event. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to spending the next hour or so going through the presentation and also helping you discover what your natural default leadership style is. Thank you for the introduction today. A little bit of add-on to that. In 2014, started Vertical Recruiting Group. In 2021, co-founded Elevator Services Group. So today I formally work as the co-founder and president of Elevator Services Group. So some of you have worked with me and may know me more formally in that capacity. So today we'll be presenting on leadership style matters. And did we get a results on the poll by chance?
We did. So 56% agree with the quote, 17% do not agree, and 28% are unsure.
Wow, that's actually a little surprising for me. I'll tell you a personal story, maybe that will help you kind of determine why you may have answered the way. So fresh out of college, I had received my training in management. I got my first job at a little known company at that time as PetSmart. And the carts needed to be taken out, and they also needed to be brought back in. And so as the new manager on the floor, I asked one of my associates to go out and retrieve the carts. And the associate looked at me and said, "No, you go retrieve the carts. I'm not going out to get the carts." And I began to think, wow, no one ever taught me how to handle this in any of my business courses. So the very thing I did was I said, well, you know what? Why don't we just fight? Why don't we just put up our dukes and let's just hash this out the old style? And I could not believe, looking back here, that my default was to literally put up my dukes and encourage and invite associate high school to basically go down in an MMA wrestling match to go out and get the carts. So I can assure you I'm not challenging anybody to fights any longer. I am, those days are behind me, but I would tend to agree with the statement that leaders are made and not born, because I certainly would not look at that experience as something I would want any of you guys attending the webinar here to do. So if you've done that, stop it. No fighting. So we're going to talk a little bit today about what style may work a little bit better and how I have grown and evolved through the time in the business environment. So I'd like to do things a little differently. Those of you who just watched the Oscars, when I had put this together, I didn't realize that the Oscars was just a few days ago. So it just so happens to tie right in. One of my favorite movies, Letters to Juliet. I know, rom-com guy. No shame in my game. I love rom-coms. There's a character in there, Sophie. She discovers a letter that's written by Claire many years back, and Claire is looking for advice on a romance situation. And Claire discovers this 40-something years later. And she goes to Verona, Italy. She goes and reads this letter. She tries to find Claire. And her encouragement was that Claire needed to go out and find Lorenzo, which was her long lost love. And basically, if you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert, watch it. It's great. But in a particular scene of that movie, Claire reads a letter. And one of the things that she reads is, what if? She says, what if Claire never came? What if Claire didn't find the letter? What would have happened? And so the story goes on and on. And if you watch the movie, you'll understand why Claire wrote that. And so as we kick off this webinar, I want you to think about two words, what and if, because these are two words. They are non-threatening as words can be. But when you put them together side by side, they have the power to haunt you for the rest of your life. What if, and what if? I'd like for you to kind of think about those two words as we spend some time together today. So I do ask, what if after this meeting, after this webinar, you adopted a leadership style that is exponentially improves your organization's success? Let's see if I can drag this out of the way. Perfect. Okay. So what if you adopted a leadership style that exponentially improves your organization's success? Well, let's look at what if. What you will discover is that regarding the financial developments, you will see a significant uptick in your profits, anywhere from 14 to 44%. Sales could go 4 to 16%. Return on equity, 9 to 25%. Return on assets, 1 to 12. And look at this. Those of you that may be attending that are shareholders, investors, private equity groups, those that are looking for return on your investments, the enterprise return, 4 to 42%. If we develop strong leaders, if we adopt leadership styles that drives organizations, motivates people to perform, influence people in one direction or another. Beyond the financial developments, look at the non-financial benefits. More efficient and targeted focus, increased customer satisfaction and loyalty, increasing trust, more committed and satisfied employees. So you can see that the argument, the business case for why we should be investing in developing strong leaders is all over the place. The studies are not even at all in the gray area as to why we should be looking at leadership styles and developing strong leaders. Further, the business case for developing strong leaders, this is as recent as 2023. For every $7, okay, I mean, for every $1 spent, there is a $7 ROI. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know of a situation where we could sit in a room of leaders, managers, organizations, business owners, and ask, for every dollar we spend, we would get a $7 ROI. I think I would like sign me up for that, whatever we're looking to invest in. Okay. So if your organization today is not looking at investing or allocating some level of budget dollars toward developing strong leaders, I encourage you to look at this statistic. For every dollar you spend, you expect to get a $7 ROI, increased revenue, increased sales, increased higher employee retention, lower recruiting costs. So some of you may not know, I run a recruiting firm. My main thing that I do is go out and I try to identify why is it that you would want to leave one organization and go work for another organization. First-hand survey, discussions with many candidates at all levels. Many of them ask, what's the culture of the business and who is leading the company? Because you, the leader of the company, you are the brand of the organization. So when you have an off day, when you pull an Elon Musk moment, I like to call it an Elon Musk moment, you have immediately created your brand. You are representing the brand of the organization. And I need individuals, I need to be able to speak to candidates and say, listen, this is the company you want to go work for. This is the strength of the leadership team. So please, please continue to do what you're doing, investing in developing strong leaders. Does your leadership style impede or enable your ability to build a high performance organization? High performance organizations are organizations that achieve financial and non-financial results that are exceedingly better than those of your peer group. But get this, ladies and gentlemen, for 5 years or more. So we are not talking about a good day out of the calendar 365 days. We're talking about a sustained effort, a sustained movement, sustained results on EBITDA, sustained result on net income, sustained results on ROIs across the business for 5 years or more. That is a high performing organization. We talk about the Tom Brady's, the GOATs, talk about Joe Montana's, the the Denver Broncos, the Elway. You know, I guess I might be aging myself a little bit on the quarterbacks of the time. But you know, those are high performing individuals. Today, we want to talk about leaders and how you can lead and create high performing organizations. So, what is your leadership style? Some of you may be saying, well, I really don't know. Okay. And that's okay, because what I typically find out when I deal with executives or I deal with leaders is there are blind spots. There are blind spots to what your leadership style is for a variety of reasons. And I'll talk to you that in the concept of what's called Johari window, developed in 1955 by Joseph Luft, Harry Ingram. These psychologists have identified these adjectives, these descriptors of what you know of yourself. Okay. You know yourself to be cheerful. Maybe you're an extrovert. Maybe you're giving. Maybe you're kind. Okay. However, we often find ourselves in situations where we know stuff about ourselves and people know stuff about us. And that is what we call your open self. So if I am an extrovert and I'm very much an extrovert, people see that. I know it. They know it. You consider yourself to be in this quadrant. However, switching over, when I ask you, what's your leadership style? You say, well, I know information about you that you don't know, but others do know. Okay. So there may be situations regarding your leadership style that people know about you, but you have no clue. People think, feel, and know that about you. They may think you're a jerk. You might not think you're a jerk, but people think you're a jerk and they're leaving the organization and no one's telling you you're a jerk. Okay, so that's a blind side. That's an issue that you need to kind of start opening and exploring how to get that. Information about you that you know but others don't know is your hidden self. These are the things you keep to yourself as a leader. Okay. I tend to get angry really quick when people don't do what I want them to do. So that's something you know about yourself. Others may not know that about you until they get you angry. So if you have things that are going on inside yourself as a leader and they're hidden to you, but others do not know about you, well, you might want to start opening up about some of those areas, because they really can't work for someone that they don't understand what makes you tick. So as a leader, I would encourage you to kind of look at what are the things that you know about yourself, but others don't know. Okay. And they don't always have to be things like super big about work. It could be, hey, you might like smaller parties instead of bigger parties, and maybe you know, you want on-site work instead of remote work. There's a lot of different things that make a leader in terms of these areas, but you need to kind of explore those. The unknown self, information about you that neither you nor others know. These are the things that kind of pop up sometimes at work. And as we lead, as we get into challenges, wow, I didn't realize that you were such a great speaker. And you're like, I didn't realize either until I just came off the stage. And so these are things that you kind of like, they're kind of like new territory for you. And that's okay too, because as leaders, it's great to always be evolving, always be growing. So this is wonderful that you've kind of discovered some new things. However, it could be some negative things too. Like, I didn't realize that you got so angry when people didn't do what you wanted them to do. You know, we didn't hire a leader of that type. And so that becomes a development area. Okay. So a little bit of back to Oscar. What if your leader's default styles to respond with famous movie one-liners? How about that? So I'm going to bring up some movie one-liner clips. I know we can't hear what you said, but into yourself, See if you can guess what movie this is from. All right. So you walk up and you're like, hey, tell me about what's going on. And you're like, you want the truth? You can't handle the truth. I just remember that line. I remember that movie. Did you order the code red? Hell yeah, I ordered the code red. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. I know you guys know where that movie's from. All right. Wow. Now I'm really dating back. This might even before I was born. So, employee walks in and tells them what a horrible day they had. Maybe the elevator just won't get running. And you say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. So, uh, some of these are kind of like leaders we've actually worked for. And then, I don't know if you can see it because my thing is on there, but you're talking to me, you go up, you want to talk to your leader, you want to talk to your manager, and they want they're always in denial that it's about them or you're talking to them. So this is taxi. And then, of course, one of my favorites, at my signal, unleash hell. I sure hope you guys that are participating in this webinar aren't running around saying at my signal, unleash hell. So if you are, thank you for coming to the leadership training. Hopefully we won't have many of those. And lastly, what any leader should never say to anyone, ever, unless you want to end up in the HR office, you had me at hello. Okay? Stay away from that. That could really get you in some big trouble. So, what is your default leadership style? Okay? So now we're at the point where we want to do this quiz together. And sorry, I muted there. And John, how do you want to do you want just to pause here and let and maybe go through yours? Let's do that. Let's
Let's do
John,
that. That works for me.
yeah, John became our guinea pig. So John, what was so John took this quiz, and if you wouldn't mind being our guinea pig and sharing what was your results, and I'll swap over to the results page, and that way why don't you go ahead and share with the audience what was your score on the people side?
Yeah, just so everybody's aware too, if you still needed access to that quiz, Lori did get it in the chat box. It's there. You click the link. That's going to pull that quiz up, and you guys can run through it with us as we're going. On the people side, I got a 34.
Okay.
Which then, you do your multiplication, it's a 6.8.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Perfect.
on the task side, I got a 37 multiplied by 0.2, which is a 7.4.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to pause real quick because those that did do the assessment may want some time just to kind of do their quick little math. So essentially, you're going to take your total score for your people, your total score for your task, and multiply each one of those by 0.2. And that will give you your X and Y axis.
Now,
So
Vong,
we'll
you
just
have to be easy on me, okay? I don't know I don't know what those numbers mean quite yet, so be easy on me.
okay. Well, we're gonna help you with that. So all right. So we're gonna switch. That's gonna be the next slide. So this is what we're gonna go over to the kind of our master key of your key here. So what you want to do for those of you who follow along, you're going to want to find your score for your people on your vertical axis, okay? And then on your then you're going to want to find your score for your horizontal axis, and then you're going to draw a line and have those intersect. And where your line intersects will be your score, your point of intersection between your X and Y. And then we'll talk a little bit about what those quadrants mean to help you. The goal is when you leave this webinar today, you have a better appreciation for what your natural leadership style is based on your assessment, and then also to entertain and look at the other leadership styles that are equally as important. So, Mr. John, our guinea pig, where did you plot? You fell. So you were 6.8, you said here?
Correct.
Give or take?
Yep, and then 7.4.
And you were 7.4. So you are like smack dab. You would have intersected right in here. You're smack dab in the middle as a team leader. And I would like to ask you, since I'm not able to ask everybody else per se. Does that surprise you, John?
Um, I don't think so. But maybe that puts me a little bit more kind of up into the right than I would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
I may have
Okay.
thought that I was going to be more towards the middle of the road there, but
Okay.
and I'm not even sure if this is good or bad yet. So you're gonna
No,
have to help me out. But yeah, no,
no.
I mean,
And and I'm so glad that you said that, John. The nice thing about this very simple exercise is that let's take away is that if we find ourselves in any one of these quadrants, we need to have we need to take a look within our own leadership style and ask ourselves, are there times when it would be appropriate for John to move more into an authoritarian type leader? Could there be scenarios within the business environment? Could there be scenarios within the challenges that we face? For example, in a military environment, you can't have a situation where it's, hey, who feels good about putting on our machine guns and taking down bunker A? No, it's like, get your guns up, take down bunker A, and after that, we're going to bunker B. And so in that environment, that leader can't really be a country club. Everyone can't be happy and drinks all the time and birthday cakes around the office. There's a time. So I think, John, you by the nature of your question helps usher in the thought that the purpose of this training is there isn't really a bad situation in terms of, oh, I'm in this quadrant or quadrant. Now, we are going to talk a little bit about what the maybe ideal quadrant would be. But just because you're up here doesn't mean that you can't work toward being any one of the other three quadrants. Okay. So let's move on to further on down, and this graph will help explain a little bit better in a graphical form. So and keep in mind, these were developed back in the 1950s, 1960s in University of Texas by Blake and Jane Mooten, who was like in the psychology department. So it still holds true today. Uh, uh, so you were here, John, okay? But if you get down into this quadrant, you would tend to be more known as an authority compliance manager, okay? So you want people to comply, and you're going to get that through authority. You do what I say, my way or the highway. We're not having a discussion about it, okay? Over here in this quadrant, this is kind of a difficult one. This is a low concern for people and a low concern for getting things done. So what you have in this case, in my professional opinion, when I've faced executives and leaders that are here, I think they're checked out. I believe that I have had cases where that leader has completely checked out of the organization. You're probably better off looking at it if they're not going to turn around into one of the other areas. Now, can you come over here sometimes and have a low concern for people and a low concern for production? Yeah, there's probably limited circumstances that be the case, but that can't be an everyday case. Okay. Country club managers, that style tends to be, I have a very high concern for people, but nothing gets done. Everybody's happy. We're like in la la land, busy world every day. And then you look and you're like, wow, none of the maintenance got done, but all my techs are happy. So it's kind of like, no turnover, but no one gets anything done. So you can't be there all the time either. There are times if we're down here, we may want to come back up here some on occasion, but definitely not something we want to stay. And we talked about team management. The middle of the road management is ideal. It's what we would consider to be where we would like people to kind of operate on a day-to-day basis, that they should strike a balance between task and the concern for people. And that if we are very good and very skillful at striking that balance, we could then create the greatest return on investment for the business in that particular scenario. So, John, you were thinking that maybe you would have liked to have been more here, middle of the road, correct? Or at least you thought you were more of that.
correct.
What is it about your day-to-day or maybe your role, what is it about some experiences that maybe that you thought that might have been more your default? Do um do you tend not to see yourself as more team management as the majority of your makeup, or
No,
what
not at
maybe
all.
share that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I obviously I spend a lot of my time, managing teams. I have a lot of teams that work under me. But I think maybe in my mind, I try to strike a balance as best as I can. So that's maybe why I would have thought I would have been a little bit more, kind of in that middle of the road. And I'm not too far off, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
was, 6'8". I probably got the upper right-hand
Yeah.
corner of that middle management road.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so and having gone through some trainings like this before,
Mhm.
I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but I'm kind of
No,
curious.
please.
Is
Please.
there a difference between, like a natural state and then, maybe like the state that you morph into in the business environment?
So it's interesting you asked that. And thank you for that question, because it does allow me to kind of share about some of the things I've seen as I have done some executive coaching. Is your natural state, interesting enough, is kind of driven by a lot of your personal bias. Um, if you have a personal bias for getting things done, your natural state may be, I'm more concerned about checking off the things that I need to do today, even though I've hurt some feelings along the way. And if your organization reinforces that by rewarding you with promotions and raises and new titles, because you're the guy who gets things done, and even though several along the way you hurt some feelings, you weren't as you know concerned for people, then that is going to be your natural state. Because we will do what we are rewarded to do. That's kind of like our makeup, right? If I do something, I get a reward for it. It's shaping our behavior. So, but I also think we're born sometimes with a natural tendency to be, um, quick to anger. Sometimes through our makeup, we tend to be more hard charging. You look at uh, coaches, NFL coaches, those of you that follow, the Indiana when Dungy managed it compared to other people. Dungy was natural state was calm under pressure. His natural state. He rarely moved. You rarely see him got very angry. And you got the Bobby Knights of the world, who was the complete opposite. So, um, my answer to you, John, is what would you consider to be your natural state when you come into the office? Um, do you see yourself more falling into you're going to have a high concern for people and a high concern for tasks, or you you maybe through your answers you actually moved into there, but your natural state is more here?
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. I
Hmm.
was wondering if my natural state was more in the middle of the road, but I kind of changed my state in the workplace in order to, to be a better team member, to lead the team, that sort of thing.
I love it. I love it. And for those of you attending, what John is hitting on is the very definition of EQ. We could do a whole different webinar on EQ. EQ is your ability to understand your environment and adjust accordingly to your environment. So if you are middle of the road and you need to jump in to become more authoritative compliance, that's okay. That is indicative of a strong leader who could read the room, who could understand the business environment, who maybe when COVID-19 happened, I could not be my natural state because I have all these new data and all these new variables coming in. I need to be able to be a bit more chameleon. I need to be able to be adjust. So that's a perfect example, John, of doing just what we would want you to do, is to read the room, read the environment, and make the appropriate adjustment. So great job on that. So, all right. So we're going to keep moving forward. So this grid is very helpful to kind of understand where you're at and what is your natural state and what modules and quadrants you may want to consider looking into. On a more definitive, more specific, or this would be helpful for you if you get a hold of the recording to go back and look at what are the key what is the definition of an authoritative leader? What is a team leader? Who is a country club leader? And they have a low task but high relationship, which I mentioned, nothing gets done. Impoverished. We talked about the impoverished down that left quadrant. Low task, low relationship. Delegate or disappear management style. Okay. And as we talked about, the most desirable place to be is striking that balance. So this key will help you kind of put some definition to your score. So I encourage you to definitely take a look at that, when you have more time. Okay. So we need strong leaders. Our industry needs strong leaders. Sports teams need strong leaders. Households need strong leaders, particularly in the business environment. I'll tell you, there is nothing that was more catastrophic for me in responding to people wanting to know, how am I going to manage through COVID? Do we test? Do we not test? Do we wear a mask? Do we not wear a mask? And what do we do about, remote work? I mean, leaders were tested unbelievably. We have diversity and inclusion. We have remote work arrangements we have to be worrying about. Talent shortage, number one barrier to growth that I'm hearing as I'm interacting with individuals across the industry, the lack of talent within the industry and that barrier that is to the growth of their business. Economic uncertainty, what's going to happen? Okay, artificial intelligence, how is that going to work into our business? Are we going to be IoT? Are we going to gravitate toward, intelligent machines, etc.? All that is you're faced with that with challenging business. Work-life balance, importance of mental health. More and more organizations are offering mental health as a key benefit during COVID, especially. Okay, I happen to know that firsthand because my wife's a licensed counselor, and many of her clients came on, and many of her day-to-day interactions were individuals during the COVID-19 and the challenge that was having on the business. Strong leaders want it. Strong leaders want it. I hope that those of you that are attending this webinar today are prepared and are positioned to handle all that is coming your way, if it's not already come your way, and what's around the corner. So I ask, are you the right person for the job? Those of you that are attending, are you the right person for the job? Should you stay in your position of leadership? It begs me to ask another question is, John, one of the questions I sent you was regarding feedback. What was that question?
Yeah. So, and if there's anybody that wants to jump in here and chat it, put it in the Q&A or the chat and answer the question, that'd be helpful. But the question that Vong, is asking of the group is, when was the last time that any of you in the audience received feedback, whether it be formally or informally, about your leadership style? And then, if anybody in the audience is willing to kind of share some of that feedback that you received.
Yeah, and let me know, John, if any feedback comes in, let me know. I'll definitely pause, and we could take a couple of contributing comments to the webinar. In the meantime, I would ask you to have a honest discussion with yourself, a look in yourself, and say, based on the quadrants that I just saw, if I'm a team manager, can I become more assertive when I need to be? Because let me tell you, I know there's always this talk about, oh, we want the feelsy goodsy. We want people to, leave feeling great about themselves and all that. Yes, that's important. But I think that there's a time and a place for that. Have a tough discussion about someone's performance, the fact that they aren't getting the job done. So I think it's very important to have that. Any feedback come in, John?
No, not yet. But
Okay.
I'll also, kind of mention to the group that if anybody did kind of go through that that quiz and assessment that we just did on myself, if there's if you want to put some of that feedback in the chat as well, so that we can chat about it. I know sometimes it's a little difficult in this format, but Vong presented several different leadership styles in different quadrants. What leadership style did you fall into? Is that surprising, et cetera. So I'll continue to monitor it, but I haven't had anybody throw anything in there quite yet.
That's great. The other question too, John, is if anyone did get a score and they were surprised or they weren't surprised, if they want to contribute to comment to that, that'd be great too. Okay. So we're getting near the end here, at least in terms of the formal webinar. So many of you leaders are in leadership positions where your organization is in pain. I don't know of a situation where there are companies, organizations that aren't in pain, whether it's a erosion of profits, whether it's covering all your bases, loss of contracts, changing technology. You're in pain. So you have people that are in pain island, and you very well could be sitting in that pain island with your people. Okay. But the goal here is everybody wants to get over to pleasure island. We want an environment where profits are up, EBITDA is on target, banks aren't yelling at us for covenant issues. We want that pleasure, right? We want to enjoy. People are happy. I'm having a time. I'm finding employees. I'm finding the talent I need. The vision is all shared by everybody. We have purpose. We have mission. We have values. We have good systems in place. That's pleasure island. So oftentimes we're in pain island. We all want to get to pleasure island. And leaders, your leadership style is the only thing that could help move from pain island to pleasure island. The bigger problem is, the biggest challenge you will need to continue to think about as a leader is, will anybody want to follow you to pleasure island, or they want to leave you on the island? Because one of the things that I remember someone told me is the mark of a good leader or an effective leader is when someone actually enjoys or looks forward to having an interaction with them during the day. And when they leave their office, they feel better about themselves and better about the organization. But I've also heard cases where I'm so glad so-and-so is traveling, because then we don't have to see him, her, we don't have to deal with him, her, because they're never going to change. So in that kind of concept, if you're that kind of leader, hey, get some feedback. I am a big fan of 360-degree feedback. There's I use what's called the Profiler 360. We used it at ThyssenKrupp across all executive teams, mid-level down to senior level. And it is a multi-rater process where you get rated by your colleague, your peers, and also your manager. And formal feedback, please consider adopting that in your organization. It's called Profiler 360. I think you'll find it easy to use and very, very impactful in terms of giving the communication that you need to your leaders within your organization. So, yeah. And in terms of the webinar, that's the end. I don't want to take up any more time than we need to. I wanted to be concise, but I also wanted to leave time for questions and answers. So let me know if there's any questions that came in. Yeah.
We had a request, if you could put the scoring back up. We had a request so that somebody could finish that.
Right here.
There's the score sheet from the Q&A. If anybody has that. And then if there's anybody in the group, again, that as you're going through and you're kind of adding that up, if there's anybody that's willing to share the results, if you want to try to get some feedback from Vong, please throw it in the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer it. Vong, while that's kind of happening in the background, a lot of us are probably very familiar with whether it be, kind of Myers-Briggs or DISC or any other, this is more leadership style, but the personality piece how does the personality tie into it? I mean, are they similar, or is this a completely different style of assessment?
Yeah, I think this gets more into, I mean, I think that it does touch a little bit on the personality, but this really gets more into concern for tasks and balancing that with concern for people. Uh, I mean, it really gets into the idea of when I need to get things done, how am I going to do that as a leader of that specific objective, right? Specific movement, specific project. So, in terms of personality, yeah, it doesn't get so much into, other than the country club side. John gets a lot into, the personality, because if you have a natural want to be friendly with everybody, then you could probably argue that their default might be country club. Um, but again, I would caution that that may be a situation where everybody's happy, but not a lot's getting done. You know.
Okay. So Jeff Hansen just asked a question. The question is, how many leaders are too many in an organization?
Yeah, so that gets outside of style, but not without knowing exactly, Jeff. One, that's a great question, but without knowing kind of the organizational makeup, it would be hard to answer that, right? Because I don't know if we're talking about a startup versus a conglomerate or multi-regional. So if Jeff, if you want to clarify that, maybe how many leaders within a specific organizational size, it might help. And I would, at best, I would be able to kind of maybe give you kind of what I have typically seen as I've worked with a lot of different organizations. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like Jeff, you're able to speak now. If you want to just chime in, you should be able to do that if you unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
All right, so I've run a number of multi-tiered organizations where there's a lot of layers involved. The problem is all those layers may be in those 4 different quadrants of leadership styles, which means at times they're going to conflict with each other. At some point, you got to say enough's enough. And the higher the title is, that's the person that gets to make the final decision as to how you're moving forward. But how do you keep the organization or all your leaders on board when you're dealing with someone that's strong in the upper right quadrant versus someone that's strong in the lower left quadrant? How do you make that work with all the different leadership qualities that are out there?
Yeah, that's always tricky because you're going to get into things like culture of the organization, how transparent they are in receiving feedback. It reminds me of the Emperor Has New Clothes story, where the emperor thought that they could make him a gown that would make him invisible when he walked around without clothes, and then everybody sees him naked, and then the only one that was willing to tell him he was naked was a little boy, because he was truthful. He's like, hey, you're naked, you're walking around town. um and you know I sometimes use that story to remind people that it's very difficult sometimes to tell the person at the very top that they're a jerk, or their vision for the company is not aligned with the culture and values that we talk about every day. So Jeff, if you have that open dialogue, and you have the ability and the comfort level to be able to kind of have those tough discussions, which I think needs to happen more often than not, um, then I would encourage you to really go do that sidebar meeting and express those concerns. If you have that kind of transparency and you have that kind of open dialogue culture, oftentimes I don't always see that kind of open, welcoming feedback. I think it gets a little bit more into command and control, unfortunately, that I see on the very top end. But I have come across some very good, strong leaders that are open to receiving feedback. That's okay to tell me that I don't have any clothes on and that I'm about to go down a horrible, horrible way, and they change directions. And as a result of it, they avoided a lot of tragedy. So are you open and willing to share? Do you feel like you could conduct that discussion?
Yes. Yeah, I don't see that being an issue with my style. The problem is when you get very strong opinionated people in the lower left versus strong opinionated people in the upper right, and you're trying to use a boss system and a business operating system where you want everybody on the same page. But sometimes it's just difficult, and decision has to be made from the highest title within the organization to say this is how we are moving forward. And when that happens, it can actually alienate some of the other leaders that you have in your organization. And that's why I get a little concerned. You can't keep everybody happy because you got a business to run. But at the same time, there's got to be a way to work with these different leadership qualities so that you can get everybody on the same page, or at least be willing to follow or to leave and go do something else if they're not going to follow the business's structure the way that it's going to work. So,
yeah, I think it's a great point. I think what I would say though is that what you're dealing with gets more into organizational design and structure as opposed to style. I think that what I would probably encourage you is probably engage a third party if the organization is willing to come in and really have some observations and some exploratory questioning about how the organization communicates within your ranks. And if that leader, the very top, is open to constructive criticism and redirect. I would challenge you though, if that leader is not, I think you're going to have an uphill battle. And I think you're going to have to make a decision as to whether you're in an environment that's going to allow you to be able to be successful and organization successful if the leader is not willing to take that feedback. Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything that I would love to give you a silver bullet answer, but I think it's going to take more discussion about the dynamics within your organization. Yeah. Any other questions come in, John, for us? Did those that wanted to rescore, would it be helpful to see the quadrants again, or?
Yeah, I thanks to Lori or whoever helped us with that. I didn't realize that we were able to unmute folks and let them talk. So that was great. So yeah, if anybody does have any feedback, now that we kind of know that we can do that, yeah, if you want to go ahead and show the quadrants again, that would be great.
Yep. So the quadrants. Yep. So basically,
and we did.
Wherever you score, just find your left, find your X and your Y, and then just intersect your numbers for your scoring. Yep.
And we did have one question come in, just regarding the availability of the PowerPoint. As a reminder to everyone, this is recorded. It's posted on the NAEC website. If anybody wants to go back and watch it later, or have any of your team members watch it later, they'll be able to, follow along, do this off of the recording as well. And Vong, I do believe you have shared your PowerPoint with Lori.
I did, yes.
So Sean, yes, we do have the ability to share it if you are looking for that. So
yes, and I will also put it on our website and be sending an email out to members about it.
Don, there were a couple other questions that but we do have a couple other questions that we could use for some group discussion if you want to share some of those.
Yeah, I mean, now if there's anybody that does want to talk and let us know, we'll make sure you guys get unmuted. Just a couple of questions for the audience and see if anybody's willing to jump in on any one of these for us. But again, just a reminder, if there's anybody in the audience that's willing to share, maybe what your default leadership style is, Has that style, maybe been effective or ineffective? Maybe we can process through that. We spoke about the feedback one, but I'll just mention it again in the event that someone's more willing to talk about it now. When was the last time that somebody in the audience has received, feedback, whether it be formally or informally, about your leadership style? And if you're willing to share and discuss, kind of maybe that's some of that feedback that we received. As Vong presented, several of the different leadership styles, that we see on our screen here. Where did the quiz say you were? And, was this a surprise to you? And, maybe the last one that I'll ask is just any other, kind of general feedback, for Vong, or any big takeaways, aha moments that you want to share with Vong, as we do have a little bit of extra time here. So Jeff, thanks for chiming in here again. And thanks for being willing to be a guinea pig for the group. Jeff said that, his style is in the team management quadrant. As he feels like he wants to have everyone on the same page, and always, kind of willing to discuss ways of improving.
Yeah, that's good. What I typically see, though, just as a without mentioning any names, is people want to see themselves as a team manager because no one likes conflict, right? However, when push comes to shove, sometimes I would like to see that manager be willing to break from the idea that it's okay that someone's upset with me, but I had to make that difficult decision. Because it's sometimes difficult to make, like Jeff, you appropriately said, you can't make everybody happy. And as leaders, we have to make those tough decisions, right? So one of the biggest takeaways I hope that you could take from this webinar is that just because your natural leadership style falls here, don't feel bad about coming into here, making people feel good about their environment, still coming back to your default, and then maybe say, does it make sense for me, even though it's not my natural style, to balance task and concern for people more effectively as a leader of this organization? Knowing that I have to come out into these other quadrants at times.
Well, I'm just touching on, kind of Jeff's example that he gave us. You have someone, upper right, communicating with someone bottom left. There's this clear, intersection, or if you will, differences of opinion. Wondering what your thoughts are about speaking when you know that you're faced with that scenario, speaking to the opposition in the style that they are, as opposed to, if you kind of know what I'm getting at there, maybe trying to find a way to bridge that gap.
Yeah, you appropriately, John, we sometimes refer to that as finding their language, right? Sometimes it is important to, if you're going to have to work with them and the opportunity to exit or whatever is not there, and not to say that that's always the right decision, right? You have to make that through a lot of different inputs. But you're right. I mean, Jeff may look at this person down here and say, well, what is it that they're always objecting to when I come speak to them? Is it always dollars and cents? Is the language dollars and cents? Then maybe I need to be a little bit more, pull my CFO in and bring more dollars and cents to the equation? Or are they always objecting because now we're taking one more task? You're asking me to do one more thing. We've already invested in a CRM. We've already, done all these other things. And now you want to bring in another app, whatever it is, right? So could it be that this person down here, maybe their language is, Jeff needs to do a better job speaking the things that are important to me, and not to say, Jeff, you're not, but John, I think you hit on a great point. Is sometimes we do have to find that the language that they're worked, and usually you can find what that language is based on what they typically object to. So, you know, let's put it this way: if you're going up to your CFO, it's probably going to be dollars and cents. If you know, so a lot of it is going to be about what they're looking for as inputs, and then helping build that business case based on the inputs and the language that resonates most with them. Yeah, I think it's a great point, John. Yeah, I don't know if that's what you were referring to, but I sense that that's what you're referring to. But if not, please clarify. Yeah.
No, that's exactly what I was referring to. Appreciate it. Yeah, I was just trying to suggest that, sometimes as leaders, we need to, try to answer it from the opposing side, as best as we can. And sometimes that'll help get us to that middle ground, as you were referring to. And, it might also be helpful, to take your team members, put your team members through this quiz, right? Like all together, collectively, go through it together, and having the understanding of, hey, this is why, Tom and I are always clashing, because we're always at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And just kind of having that awareness as a team, might help to really kind of fostering and that communication.
And I can't tell you enough. I can't encourage organizations, those that are attending this meeting. I literally looked at I sat with an executive over a 40-minute, 360-degree feedback, and I had a 45-year-old executive start crying. I mean, literally start crying. First of all, I wasn't prepared for that, okay? No amount of training, no amount of certified feedback, whatever I was given, could prepare me. The reason why he was crying is because he did not realize that his boss felt that had a specific feedback about the way he managed his branches. And he thought all along that he was doing a bam job, a dynamic job. And it wasn't until he went through this 360-degree feedback exercise that the boss, and because mind you, this feedback exercise so we believe this feedback to be real, to be candid, and that it was an honest feedback for him, which is what really hurt him. Subsequently, the following year, we would do a follow-up, because that's part of your development process. And then I asked him, hey, so-and-so, I know the last time we met a year ago, this was really upsetting to you. Were you able to move the dial in some of the areas and some of the feedbacks? And he says, absolutely, Vong. Some of the stuff that you told me about that my boss thought about me, I addressed, I did differently. And I am such a stronger leader for that. So it may be that 360-degree feedback could help usher in some neutral ground, like you're talking about, John, through a third-party system like a 360 feedback, and then offer an opportunity for someone either outside of the organization to come in and give that feedback, so that it doesn't look like it's just two heads clashing all the time. So I just can't stress enough the need for neutral, unbiased, third-party feedback, if you can, about your leaders, because they really need to know when they're naked, they don't have the clothes on. It's embarrassing. It's detrimental to the business. Someone needs to tell them.
I appreciate that, Vong, and I don't have I have not had any other kind of questions or feedback come through. So in the absence of that, if something pops up as I'm closing out, great, I'll stop myself. But in the absence of that, again, I've said it earlier, but just a reminder, this is going to go live on the NAEC website. I think it'd be a great idea to have your team members watch it, have them go through the exercise. If you need to review the slides, get the results of your test again, if you didn't have time to do it, it will be available on the NAEC website. Appreciate the fact that everyone joined us today. Vong, especially appreciate your time sharing your expertise with us today. And thanks for everyone for attending. And hopefully we will be seeing many of you at the spring educational conference in about a month or so. So great job, Vong. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
And take care.